Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to Living the Gospel of Life. I'm your host, Leticia Velasquez, and as always, let's start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Mary, bright dawn of the new world, Mother of the living, to you do we entrust the cause of life. Look down, O Mother, upon the vast numbers of babies not allowed to be born, of the poor whose lives are made difficult, of men and women who are victims of brutal violence, of the elderly and sick killed by indifference or out of misguided mercy. Grant that all who believe in your Son may proclaim the gospel of life with honesty and love to the people of our time. Obtain for them the grace to accept that gospel as a gift ever due, the joy of celebrating it with gratitude throughout their lives, and the courage to bear witness to it resolutely in order to build, together with all people of goodwill, the civilization of truth and love, to the praise and glory of God, the Creator and Lover of life. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, I'm honored to bring to you today a young woman I met at the Choose Life at Yale conference, Vita et Veritas, a couple of weeks ago. Her name is Terrisa Bukovinac, and she is an atheist, a feminist, a vegan, consistent life activist. She's a San Francisco local and founder and executive director of Pro-Life San Francisco. She was all the way over in Connecticut. It's great that she came there. She was also a co-leader of Secular Pro-Life, vice president of Rehumanize International, and speaks to pro-life groups on secular and millennial outreach throughout California. Her efforts have been featured in major media outlets such as Huffington Post, San Francisco Chronicle, NPR, Slate, Yahoo News, Refinery 29, Daily Signal, Christian Post, Democratic Underground, and Our Sunday Visitor. She resides in the Tenderloin with her cat. Welcome, Terrisa. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. It was great meeting you at Yale.
Yeah, so tell me about starting your organization. I find it fascinating that you started your organization. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, I've spent many years as a director for Secular Pro-Life at various levels of involvement. But the last few years, I've been working a lot more significantly with that organization, founded by Kelsey Hazard. And what that organization does is kind of create a safe space for pro-life atheists and agnostics and other non-traditional pro-life people. And it helps the pro-life movement in general use a shared basis of understanding when communicating about abortion. So I had been working within that effort for some time. And then I realized in the wake of the Trump election that there was a need for a much more millennial viewpoint on abortion issue, and there was a need for more stability in terms of young people, and not just young people like students, but young working professionals. The next generation is going to inherit the problem of abortion. And I thought, well, this was a good opportunity to try to do something more grassroots in my own community like San Francisco. And obviously, the abortion industry considers San Francisco to be like its own backyard. So it seems
I live close to the other one, New York. So it's got two backyards. Totally.
Yes, very similar situations
in
San Francisco and New York. And so I decided to get started. Now, I didn't really have a faith community at all, and I didn't know any pro-life people in real life at first. It took a lot of networking. Like, I knew people online, which is primarily how Secular Pro-Life operates, but not people within my own community. I went around, tried to meet people connected me with other people and so forth, and then eventually we were able to launch in October 2016. And
wow, so you're brand new, just 2 years old. That's awesome.
Yeah, we just incorporated in December of 2017, so less than a year ago, as a full California charity. And our mission is, in addition to putting a millennial faith behind the pro-life cause in a very pro-abortion place, we we want to give a real resistance to the influence of the abortion industry in our community, but we also want to connect the pregnant people in our community with resources that they need to choose life. And over all of that, we really just want to be this educational organization that can help bring this issue to light for the community and for the elected officials who represent us.
Wow, so your activism, you're like a pregnancy center, your networking, your fellowship, you're all these different things at once. Do you have actual meetings or virtual meetings?
Well, we just pretty much do events.
Okay.
Most millennials in San Francisco are extremely busy and are already invested in some kind of activity outside of work. Many serve on different boards. So it can often be a challenge to get serious time commitments from people. But what we do is organize events that people can stop by. And we have a rotating group of about between 60 and 70 activists. So at any given time, we can get a handful of people out at a specific event for visibility and then promote it on social media and hopefully reverberate that from there. But in terms of actually getting together for meetings and things like that, that's just not something millennials really have time for in a major city.
Good for them. They're pretty boring. If you can manage to do without them, good for you. You remind me of Pro-Life Future. Are you familiar with that? That's an outreach of Students for Life to millennials.
We actually started as a Pro-Life Future chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
we worked with them in Hartford. We were Pro-Life Future Hartford out of our pregnancy center, Hartford Women's Center, and with C.J. Williams, and she's been on the show as well. Yeah. And she had that same approach. Let's just do events, And for her, some of them were just fun, or a lot of them revolved around the pregnancy center that we were running, like they helped us move, et cetera, and do a little bit of renovation. But it was always very hands-on, very active, and not just sit around. We only had one or two sitting around meetings at the very beginning, and after that, they just sprung into action. It was awesome.
Totally.
And everybody went to graduate school in different cities, and it kind of fell apart. But that's okay, because that's the millennial lifestyle, and they will bring that with them. Let's see, they're in Providence and D.C. pretty much. So they've spread out.
Exactly.
But what they learned and what their experience was, I'm sure will stay with them. And that's the important thing.
Yeah, that's kind of the vision, is to be able to tailor it to the community. And C.J. Williams is actually the individual that really kind of pushed me to do something on a more local level. And we worked together for some time with Pro-Life Future. Pro-Life Future has a great role to play in communities, and I hope that every city does have an active Pro-Life Future chapter. We just have a broader mission, I would say, than Pro-Life Future did. So it just makes sense for us to be a little bit more independent. But it's
exciting to me how many millennials are involved in the pro-life movement, and the older generation. I always had a problem being the youngest person in the pro-life movement, which is pretty sad in my 50s. And whenever I'm the youngest person, I know there's a problem. So when I see millennial movements, I'm very excited, because when you go to the march, that's all you see, pretty much. High school, college, and millennials. And they can't be going to little lady meetings and being patted on the head like I was. I was the youngest one when I went to the March for Life in the 70s. I don't want to be the youngest one anymore. That's pretty bad. It's great that you are adapting activism to your lifestyle. That's fantastic, because there's no set way to do it. The point is to do it. And if it's all online, so be it. Right? But it's not in your case. I'm sorry. It's a mix, which is fantastic, and I want people to know where to find you. Just look up Pro-Life San Francisco.
ProLifeSF.com. We are on Facebook at Pro-Life San Francisco, Instagram at ProLifeSF. We are the largest and most active group of pro-life millennials anywhere in the country right now.
Nice.
We happen to be.
And who would have thought? San Francisco. Good job. Why do you think there's so much activity in San Francisco, pro-life activity?
Well, there's a lot of intention behind a pro-life position here, and it's also a weak spot for the abortion industry. They've spent very little resources trying to compel people in these communities about the pro-choice position, because they take it for granted. I think we're
That's a good point. You're in San Francisco, for heaven's sakes. You've got to be pro-abortion. That's funny.
Right, but they don't know why they are. They don't know why they're pro-choice. They just always have been, and everyone in their community is. So they haven't been as exposed to a pro-life position. Most of them have never even met someone.
So they're right for the picking. Once you start telling the truth, aren't they?
Right, and San Francisco is very left-leaning, and most of the pro-life rhetoric that we find is aligned more heavily with the Republican point of view. So
that's true.
It's just a matter of being able to tailor the pro-life message to the community in a way that's meaningful to them, that isn't alienating, that draws them in.
In other words, you don't have to go with the whole package of the right just because you're pro-life.
Right, not at all. And that's why I think it's so crucial that we magnify voices like my own who don't necessarily fall into the traditional stereotypes of what a pro-lifer is, because it signals to the people who disagree with us that people like them actually do have a place in this movement, and that being pro-life is compatible with more progressive ideals.
Which is interesting, because I just learned this myself, because I was very young when Roe versus Wade, of course you weren't even here, but when Roe versus Wade was passed, it was a young preteen, and I didn't realize this, but it was heavily embraced by the Democratic Party early on as a sort of an outreach of the civil rights movement. And that changed. I would really like to do some more research and find out what happened. But I do remember watching the Republican convention in the Democratic convention in 1976, I believe, or 1980. Jimmy Carter was there, whichever. Okay, he was obviously our president from 76 to 80. But my grandmother from Ireland, a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, never voted Republican in her life, watched the Democrats talk about abortion, and she got very upset. And she said, I just might vote Republican, God forgive me, but, then she broke her hip and couldn't vote. And she said, see, God didn't want me voting for Republican. I said, Grandma. So it was a crazy time that, nobody knew who was going to embrace the pro-life movement, and we were hoping it would be both sides, and we could pick and choose. Unfortunately, it seems to be the Democratic Party is pretty hostile to that. Do you feel that way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Democratic Party's relationship with abortion is undeniable. The abortion industry has ensured that they are funding all of the political campaigns of all of the leaders they want to put in office and ensuring a victory for them. They've been able to basically to replace all of the pro-life Democratic leadership with pro-choice candidates.
Yeah, who's left? Who's left? I think there's a couple. The Democratic Party that's openly pro-life. Yeah,
Lipinski, John Bell Edwards, in Louisiana. I mean, there's a few dotted across the nation, but this is not representative of the constituency. On a nationwide scale, at least a quarter of Democrats identify as pro-life. And
wow, it's not their priority when they're voting, or they're not aware of the party's point of view, or they're just conflicted as all get out. I think the concern is
where the money is coming from for the campaigns, and the bigger and brighter the campaigns, the more likely they are to succeed. And millennials and Democrats in general are swayed very heavily by these very deeply held left-leaning ideals. And I think that, their pro-life opinions, while a quarter of them consider themselves pro-life, often get buried under these other priorities. Or maybe not even priorities, but just other ideologies that make it difficult for them to justify voting one way or the other, or for abandoning.
I feel the same way as a Catholic. There are Catholics vote 50-50, so it's pretty easy to say that. As a pro-life Catholic, I find abortion absolutely unacceptable, and I cannot vote for someone that supports it, especially vocally. And we're getting more and more vocal as time goes on, it seems. But there are things obviously that I disagree with the Republican Party, and gosh darn it, I wish I could vote a la carte, but by issue, But that's not possible yet,
Right, it's not. And the reality is that while the abortion industry is heavily aligned with the Democratic Party, it is in all of our best interest to ensure that relationship does die, that comes to an end, because
nobody should be in their pocket. Nobody.
Right. As long as someone's taking their money and able to give them the power that they need, then that's going to continue. So while I totally get the important legislative strides strides that Republicans have made and the efforts that pro-life groups have made to elect Republican candidates, there's also another very important strategy that we can't ignore. We can't just allow this relationship to fester with the Democratic Party when the power still lies with the people. We are still at least 25% of the constituency, and I would say in a place like California, it's probably much higher than that because of the overwhelming left-leaning ideals. So there's probably a lot more people buried under the Democratic point of view there, and we must target that, and, that's kind of our goal is to really dig in
good
here.
For you. We definitely want to send the abortion industry packing, There's a lot of industries that control legislators on both sides, and it's very frustrating. It definitely is one of the most frustrating things about being involved in politics is you're a constituent, sure, but you don't have a lot of money, and the industries and special interests do. So it's definitely a special interest, and it's very frustrating to me that we are funding Planned Parenthood, and yet they're investing in candidates. Somehow a 501c3 manages to do that. If our 501c3 started to endorse candidates, we'd be in big trouble real fast.
Yeah, I mean, we can't either, of course. But what we seek to do is to educate our leaders. So we would just go and talk to them. Like, of course, everybody in San Francisco is a Democrat. Everyone's pro-choice. But what they need to see is that there are people within San Francisco, even people that identify as Democrats, even people that hold all of the same values that they do, but do not want to see the abortion industry expanded in our community. And I think that if we can dig in on a community level in a place like San Francisco or a place like New York, that can really send a powerful message. That's how social justice movements are won, by starting at the grassroots level and really just expanding into those culturally relevant communities.
So tell me about some of the discussions you've had with legislators. You don't have to use their name if they don't want to, but where have you been able to make inroads, if you could just say in general?
Well, I wouldn't say that we've exactly made any inroads yet, but we have definitely made our presence known. I have approached
that itself is something, just getting noticed.
We think so, absolutely. Change can sometimes take time, sometimes it can come quickly, but either way, the first steps have to be made. And that is saying, hey, we're young, we're cool, we're Democrats too, some of us. Not all of us are religious, but we definitely think that the abortion industry is a negative influence in our community. And we express that to, like, David Chu, who's an assemblyman who co-authored the Reproductive Fact Act that was struck down at the Supreme Court this summer in June in NIFLA versus Becerra.
Which I was cheering on because it set my pregnancy center free from the local abortion clinic that was trying to regulate our free speech. Yeah,
exactly. It really saves us all. But he was actually pioneering the side of that was doing the forcing. So we went to speak with him.
And you spoke with him. That's fascinating. What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, he was just like, okay, I was telling him I was concerned about, what would pregnant people in our community do if they were, like, targeting pregnancy centers and not wanting women to go there. And I explained to him how abortion coercion is a real thing. It's something even the abortion industry acknowledges.
That's really good because I think they don't understand that. I see it all the time.
Well, the numbers are, like, the way Guttmacher reports them, they'll say something like, 90-some% of women who seek abortions were not coerced. Now, we know these numbers are biased, but still, like, even if it's 90%, that's 10 out of 100 girls that go in for an abortion are being coerced. That's something we should be concerned about in our community.
Right. What about their rights? What about their rights not to be coerced to do something with their body that they don't want to do?
Exactly. Especially if we're targeting pregnancy centers and removing the right to seek out counsel that will help her not get an abortion. And you can't realistically expect an industry that profits from abortion to be able to accurately assess whether or not someone is being coerced. So,
really? Because that's what the director of the pregnancy center said in the hearing. She said, I give them all their options. And I've had several girls go in there and get pregnancy tests and get counseled. And no, I'm sorry, but the options are not discussed. It's when and where do you want the procedure.
We can't rely on a profiting entity to make these determinations solely. And so, he didn't really have a good answer for that. And he was kind of unclear about, I asked him, or he's tried to say, well, these pro-life pregnancy centers, they lie to women. And I said, there hasn't been a single instance of any woman who has come forward in the state of California, even amidst a Supreme Court case that is claimed to have been lied to or misled by a pregnancy center.
Really? So he's just basing that on the testimony of Planned Parenthood and ARAL? Where's he getting these ideas from?
Completely. They got all the research from NARAL. So he was not sure about that. He was like, no, I don't think that's right. And I was like, I gave him my card and I was like, please feel free to email me when you can find someone who's willing to say that they've been lied to. Or
still waiting for that email?
Yeah, still waiting for the email. So, it's not like it was.
We had a couple of cases where women claimed that, they were coerced. I happen to know that one of them was false, but in the interest of confidentiality, I couldn't reveal that. And another one, the woman was not coerced. We can't even lock our door from the inside. There's no way a woman couldn't go running out the door if she heard something she didn't like. All we do in a pregnancy center that I've operated is offer choice. We don't talk about abortion because we know that's easy to find, but we offer the other choices, adoption. We talk about the child's development. We talk about the resources that we can give her and the way we can support her. And we support the woman from the moment she walks in the door till the baby is 2. Sometimes it's nearly 3 years. And it's just amazing. Most of the women, the only support they needed was emotional. Someone to be excited about this baby. Someone to say, you know what? We know where you can get a GED. Oh, wait, here's a babysitting resource. Oh, here's some inexpensive housing. Of course, in Connecticut, that's all relative, as is in San Francisco. But a lot of time, it's just someone to come alongside them and say, I got this with you. You're not alone. And because the men were so, in many cases, pushing them towards abortion, they really felt alone. So coercion can be a hard thing to measure because some women won't acknowledge it, but you can see the effects of it on them because they're so happy that they don't have to have it. And if they were really sold on having an abortion, why are they so easy to talk out of it? The first chance they get, they're like, oh, thank God, I got this. It would be a harder sell if most women were truly convinced that this was the best choice for them. I think most of them feel like, I'm not happy with my choice, but I don't have a choice. I think that's the way most of them come in to the pregnancy center. Yeah. All right, I'll listen to you, but I really don't think you can do anything for me because, I'm in a bad situation. And we don't always convince them, but we do our best to show them a future where this child doesn't destroy their lives. And no one's saying they have to raise it, but that ends up being what 90% of them do. But just that that child is not going to destroy your dreams, and we'll be there to make sure to help you with that as much as we can. Anyway, so don't let me take over the whole thing, but that's fascinating. I want to know how you became pro-life without religious underpinnings, like how you came to an understanding that abortion is wrong.
Sure. So I was raised Christian. I grew up in the Worldwide Church of God, and then in my 20s I became a Lutheran, and I served on the board of evangelicals at a prominent ELCA church. But the ELCA is pretty liberal, and I don't remember anyone ever talking about abortion in terms of church teaching, and I just really did not understand how frequently abortion happens in this country. I really kind of thought of it as a rare thing and didn't quite think about it very much at all. But I was dating someone who was agnostic, but he was very right-leaning. He was pretty conservative, and he was very pro-life. And I've always had a sensitivity to animals. I am a vegan, and he would say, how can you care about the dolphins and you don't care about unborn children being killed in the womb? And I was just like, what? Unborn children? It's just a clump of cells. And he went out of his way to show me images and pictures of children in utero. And I thought for the first time that, okay, abortion is probably something that's wrong. This definitely looks bad. Like, I didn't quite realize how developed an early embryo can be. And as an animal rights person, I was struck by, like, was clearly some type of violence being inflicted on the preborn. But I was religious, and I felt really strongly that these babies would go directly to heaven when they die, and that when, our lives are done, there would be some type of divine justice where God would right the wrong, and that I believed so much that my life was being willed by God, that I was here because God had a plan for my life, and that while it was really sad that some of these babies were dying, maybe that there just wasn't a will for them to live, or that God didn't have a purpose for them. And I thought about all of the other horrible things happening in the world to born children who can, definitely feel pain and whose families can experience emotional anguish, and I wasn't doing anything about those things. So it didn't make any sense to me at the time to be politically pro-life. I only just kind of had the personal feeling that it was wrong, but didn't feel comfortable in any way infringing that upon someone else. But all of that changed when I lost my faith, which happened over a period of many years. But once I did completely, I started to rethink everything, my entire moral compass, what is right and wrong, and how do I know what's right and wrong, and what is the meaning of my life, and all of these existential problems. And I just started thinking a lot more about abortion and just how life is an opportunity for me to experience the universe. It is a profound experience that I just happened to come into existence by chance, by no participation of my own. I just kind of get this rare cognitive experience. And I just started to think about what would justify robbing some of that opportunity to have this one and only experience. And I found myself more and more feeling like the only way you could justify it is the exact same way you would justify taking the life of any other born individual. So I was pretty secretly pro-life for a while. I didn't tell a lot of people because I didn't think it would make sense, because obviously I wasn't religious. But I found secular pro-life pretty soon after, and then I realized that there was a place for me in this movement, and that secularists like myself have a unique and crucial role to play in the future of this cause. So here I am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. So everybody deserves a chance at life. If you have to boil it down?
If human rights is a thing at all, if we are going to say that generally taking someone's life is wrong in any other situation, then we have to apply that consistently. And that doesn't mean
but you discovered that an unborn child is life through your boyfriend who showed you fetal images, correct?
Yeah, that's what helped me kind of awaken to the idea that it was a human. But science could have told me that. It was
that is science.
Way.
That has nothing to do with religion, actually. The fetal development, as far as I know, is a pretty, long-established scientific field. But it's religious people who very often will point it out because of conviction. But then the pro-abortion movement mixes that up with our convictions. No, we're using science in the service of our beliefs because we believe our beliefs are, as religious people, based on truth. Okay, we believe God is truth and that everything flows from God, and the truth of a child's development is something that everybody should know. And are you finding more and more people in San Francisco that you talk to are surprised how developed a child is early on?
Oh, absolutely. I would say the general population is definitely does not understand the level of horror of abortion.
And we're one of the most educated, especially on the West and East Coast, most educated people in the history of the world. I mean, how many percentage of people go to university where that never happened before? So what do you attribute to this startling lack of biology knowledge?
Abortion makes billions of dollars every year, and worldwide probably in the trillions.
Okay. It's a business then.
It can buy everything that we need to manipulate a population.
Mm-hmm.
The pro-life movement, while our cause is true and noble, we don't have a single source of income. Therefore, we won't have a single source of marketing. We won't have a single source of messaging. We won't have a a single way of buying politicians and paying for media talking points. It's just Planned Parenthood.
Terrisa, that's because I didn't win the lottery this morning. Okay, because if I had, I promised I was going to make that a reality and let every American know. But it unfortunately didn't happen. So no, seriously, if I ever win, that's maybe that'll increase my chances. But that's what I want, because we don't have access to the media, to universities, to public schools.
Yeah, because we don't have the money and we can't fund.
And the people that work in these institutions are, by and large, not pro-life. So they, unfortunately, I had the experience of working in a public school in many instances where my pro-life beliefs were not welcome, and that may have been the reason I wasn't invited to come back.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's because the money dominates. I don't think it's really because that would be people's true convictions if they had an equal distribution of information throughout their lifetimes, but people in general are pro-choice because that's the default they've been told to go to from the paid-for media and talking points, from the paid-for politicians that they trust with their other deeply held ideological viewpoints. So it's very complicated. But
and sometimes it's misplaced compassion because, a woman in a crisis pregnancy is very easy to get your sympathy. And, of course, I wouldn't be running pregnancy centers if I didn't care about them. But these women in many cases are not told that abortion can have pretty severe consequences.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is completely suppressed. And even if it's a small percentage of the abortion industry, is going to make sure that anyone who brings that up is shamed and called anti-science for even suggesting it. So it's a tight rope to walk, but I think, like I said, the first step is really taking out that major pillar of power, which is Planned Parenthood, and that means attacking every possible avenue of income that they get. And
so you're into the defunding Planned Parenthood movement that...
Yeah. We have to defund them. They need to be prosecuted for their crimes of trafficking fetal tissue. Now, they are being investigated by the FBI right now, so the FBI could hand down indictments before the end of the year. We don't know exactly what's going on, but we know that it's happening. So,
I read that recently. What really bugs me is a lot of people don't understand Kamala Harris's role in prosecuting David Daleiden. So maybe are you familiar with that? So you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
First, who David Daleiden is. He formed a company to investigate, do undercover work, to investigate the trafficking in human body parts, which is illegal.
Exactly. So he's responsible for all those undercover Planned Parenthood videos. And many of you will remember back in 2015 when he released those videos, Kamala Harris, who was the California Attorney General at the time, raided his home and took all of his information. And we actually just found out recently, within the last couple of months in court, that she, a few days before that happened, she had hosted an emergency meeting with several Planned Parenthood executives and executives.
What a coincidence.
Body parts companies and Planned Parenthood's chief legal attorney, Beth Parker. And when the judge found out, he was pretty shocked. And when we filed a motion to have the case dismissed, and also the motion to for an evidentiary hearing to interview the people who were at this meeting, including Kamala Harris, Beth Parker, and all these Planned Parenthood top-level executives, the judge refused to let them have the evidentiary hearing. So.
Wow. So in other words, they would have forced her to recuse herself from the case because she had an interest in the case.
Technically involved. The charges were officially brought by the next Attorney General, Javier Becerra, who's also the same one who's trying to force pregnancy centers to refer for abortion.
Niffler versus Becerra. Yep.
Yep, exactly.
But that's how she kind of rose to national prominence. I think he was ultimately he got in trouble for faking a California license. Getting a fake license?
The charges he's facing from the state are for eavesdropping. There's felony counts of eavesdropping that have never been enforced on a journalist before.
Of course, he'd be the first one, right?
Exactly. I mean, every investigative journalist in the state has to use these exact same methods in terms of doing any kind of undercover investigative journalism. It is protected by the First Amendment, and it's a discriminatory prosecution. Obviously, they're looking to silence David and to intimidate any future activism. And they're definitely taking a long time doing this. It looks like we're going to be in court, for many more years to come, unless something novel happens. But just so everyone knows, David's preliminary hearing starts February 19th, 2019, here in San Francisco, and all of the Jane and John Does will have to testify under oath in a public hearing.
These are the people he interviewed on camera.
Yep.
Oh, that will be interesting.
So that should be very, very interesting for all of us. And
Absolutely.
I know that David would really appreciate your support around that
absolutely.
time. So if you send them,
definitely.
Send the Center for Medical Progress a message on Facebook. Just let them know that we're still here supporting him. And
I share and retweet every time I see something. I try and stay up on the latest. This is news for me.
Great.
Thank you. Because he brought to light the fact that Planned Parenthood officials and medical doctors were trafficking in baby body parts, and it even affected how they did abortions. They would make sure that they did not crush, I believe, the skull so that they could get intact brains. So they were very cognizant of making money not only off the abortion but off the parts of the children that they dismembered, etc. The mothers in many cases didn't know, correct?
That's right. HIPAA violations and all of that. So all of those, all the videos have actually led to the FBI investigation that's happening right now. So it's
fantastic.
It just took a while, but it's all happening because of David's work.
Oh, well, he's a hero of mine. Father Frank Pavone has a saying that America won't reject abortion until America sees abortion, and that's your proof of that. That when you really saw what the baby was capable of at what age, the glob of tissues suddenly became a human being with a beating heart and a destiny. And anyway, Gosnell was the case. Dr. Kermit Gosnell was an abortion doctor in Philadelphia, and his was the case that threatened to draw national attention to the horrors of late-term abortion, which is uncommon. I believe it's 8% of abortions, but it still happens every day in the United States. So what happened is he was caught. Dr. Gosnell ran a very disgusting, shoddy clinic in a poor neighborhood in West Philly. And there had been health inspectors there, but nothing ever happened. And I believe the governor, Tom Ridge, a Republican, told the health department to ignore the deplorable conditions of the clinic. Do you want to describe them, Terrisa?
Sure. So there had been several complaints over Gosnell's career of single-use instruments for surgical procedures and like animals and cats running around the clinic, litter boxes everywhere.
He reused instruments on several women, giving some of them STDs.
Exactly. And
from
even in the,
somebody else's tissue and blood that was on them. Disgusting.
In the grand jury report, there were reports of women having to urinate in the hallways and no one cleaning it up. And the police found exactly evidence of those types of things when they entered his facility.
As well as the cats. So you and I both love cats, but you certainly don't want to live in a place with cat feces. There's cat feces on the floor.
Yeah, and not
cats
a medical
roaming.
facility. Yeah.
And there were bodies in bags strewn about in the refrigerators, in juice containers with the tops cut off. There were jars of baby feet in the refrigerator, in the shelves. It was blood everywhere, on the chairs, on the operating table, on the walls. There were separate waiting rooms for black and white women. Mm-hmm. And the whole place was a warren of tiny hallways and interconnected offices, so that when Kayamana Mongor, I believe, the woman who died at the clinic, the ambulance came to get her, they could barely get the stretcher out. It took them forever to navigate the hallways, which again is a violation of any medical standards for outpatient clinic. So there were so many violations, it was unbelievable. But Kermit Gosnell was not actually his place wasn't being investigated for illegal abortions or for unsanitary conditions. It was for drug drug prescriptions. He was selling OxyContin prescriptions. So he's a pill mill as well. So this man had the morals of a snake. He also had teenagers administering anesthetics using color codes. You know, pink and purple, and you know, so you had a 17-year-old medicating women, and he wasn't even present. He would come in only after the women were prepped and ready for the procedure. And the day, at least in the movie, when the cops were there and he showed up, he was more interested in feeding his turtles. He had rare turtles in a cage than he was in the condition of his patients. So it was really horrific that a man like that could be in operation with knowledge of the health department after several complaints were made. So anyway, this trial, he's brought to trial, and he's eventually convicted, and he's got a life sentence, only in a couple of counts of murder. Oh, we didn't talk about the most important part. He brought babies out of the birth canal alive, which is illegal. They are supposed to be helped, given first aid, and he snipped their necks with scissors to make sure they died, to make sure they're dead. And there were several baby bodies that were brought in, photos were brought in as evidence. You don't see them in the movie, just so you know. It's not a gory movie. It's very dramatic, it's very moving, and it's upsetting at times, but it's not gory. They don't resort, the filmmakers did not resort to gore to bring their point across, unlike many Hollywood movies that, you know, gore is right up front, especially a couple of weeks before Halloween. Seems like you can't change the channel without seeing a flow of blood. And they didn't use that because, to me, the evidence is just overwhelming without even saying anything. That women were, as they said, there was nothing that he did that helped women. Nothing.
Yep.
So anyway, the trial was in 2013, am I right?
Yes, that's correct. So it's been some time.
Pardon?
Yeah, it's been some time. They were having some difficulty getting this movie funded.
Well, the first thing was I wanted to talk about the trial had nobody from the press. Only one or two members of the press were attending, including Mr. McElhenney and Ms. McAleer, who were a married couple, Anne McElhenney and Phelan McAleer, an Irish couple that were in Pennsylvania covering fracking. So they weren't pro-life. They weren't interested in life issues, but this sounded like an interesting trial. They happened to be in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, and they attended. And they were shocked to see row after row of seats marked press that were empty. And I believe there was a local reporter, too. I forget the name. So I believe it was a local reporter tweeted a picture of these empty seats. And then those of us activists on Twitter created a Twitter storm so that it would trend. And then all of a sudden, places like CNN and USA Today and New York Times, et cetera, had to cover it. And it became a national issue. Because the local reporters were saying, the CNN reporters initially were saying, it's just a local issue. But we made it a national issue. And that's, like you said, calling attention to the truth is very important. Yeah, especially when you have a horror show like that. Because nobody in their right mind would support that man's right to continue in medical practice. I don't care what you think about abortion. Nobody should be treated like that. Not even the cats were properly cared for. Maybe the turtles. But other than that, that was his only concern when his office was shut down, was please, take the turtles out, which is nice. I don't even think he cared about the cats, which, being a cat lover, that bothered me more. But, how are my patients? No, nothing. He only cared about the turtles. So it's rather upsetting. So anyway, the press came, and then the McElhenneys wrote this book, The Untold Story of America's Most Prolific Serial Killer, Gosnell. And I don't know how popular it was. I don't know if it made the New York Times bestseller list. I believe it was kept from it, but that it was very well received. And they made a movie from it. And you were talking about the funding of the movie. And, of course, Hollywood's not going to fund a movie about abortion, because Hollywood loves abortion, as far as we can see.
Yeah. So, of course, like you said, Hollywood and most of the media is certainly not on the side of exposing any thing that's negative about abortion. Mm-hmm. So there have been very little reviews of this movie. Like you said, there was a media blackout.
Like about 7 or 8 reviews versus 72 for some of the, and it's number 9 movie the first week it came out. So it made the top 10, yet no one's interested in reviewing it. Virtually no one is interested in reviewing it.
Right. I mean, well, we have a powerful institution that's most certainly pressuring the media and private organizations to to abandon any effort to review this, especially in any kind of positive light, which is it's just so telling, because the Gosnell story is real. There's nothing biased about this story. It actually happened. And if you happen to think infanticide makes abortion look bad, well, maybe, that can be problematic on an intellectual level, but if you're trying to make the pitch that killing babies is bad but abortion is okay, then you shouldn't really have a big problem with Gosnell. So it's just...
Right, be consistent, because
it's about a serial killer who killed born alive infants. And if the abortion industry is trying to silence that says something about who they are.
What does it tell you about the respect for human life? That the fact that the abortion, there was another abortionist in the movie, that a female who was very put together, professional looking, very poised, and she sat there and told about how she dismembered babies and made a hole with scissors in the back of their neck, just like Gosnell did, but she did it within the birth canal so that the baby was not delivered and it was legal. And she said occasionally a baby would be born and they would not help the baby survive. In other words, the baby would asphyxiate, and that Gosnell was actually more humane to kill them quickly, painfully, no anesthesia, of course, as they're being basically decapitated, but that was actually compassionate. So for that to what Gosnell has done to be seen as compassionate, there's something seriously wrong about abortion.
Yep. Exactly. And that's why they don't want anyone to see this film, which is exactly why everyone listening should go see this film. The film was dropped from over 100 theaters today, despite its excellent performance. It was the #1 indie film opening weekend.
That's right.
And it has remained in the top 10 since its release. So,
and they had trouble getting ads on Facebook and NPR. Facebook and NPR didn't want to run ads. So what do? We shared ads on Facebook. We put them on our profile. See, everything can be gotten around. Well, not everything, but we try very much on social media. The pro-abort blackout, we try and get around it. And we're somewhat successful. I've heard a lot of my posts are blocked, but not all of them. So I just keep posting.
Well, everyone needs to go see this film like today before it's from your theater. It's
a very important film. I consider it the Uncle Tom's Cabin of the abortion movement, because
it really is.
Harry Beecher Stowe wrote. Yeah,
It can appeal to absolutely everyone. It uses a shared basis of understanding.
Yep.
It is not cheesy. It is not done with any religious overtones. It is just a very straightforward kind of
Just
law
the
and
facts.
order.
Just the facts.
Yep.
It reminds me of Law and Order. I'm a big fan of Law and Order. It's very much like it.
Get all of your friends to watch this, whether they're pro-choice or pro-life or somewhere in between. Everyone needs to have an opinion on this movie, and I want to hear it. So message me at San Francisco.
Absolutely, and go out for coffee afterwards and chat it up and talk about it, and go online and see Baby A. They don't show you Baby A in the credits, but they tell you to go on GosnellTheMovie.com, and you can see the actual baby. Baby's A picture was taken by an assistant. I won't call her a nurse because she wasn't a nurse. A young woman who was assisting Gosnell in the procedure, and his neck was snipped. And Gosnell joked. He said, "This little one is so big he could walk me around the corner to the bus." And that girl felt that it was a shame that this child's very brief life should end without any memory of his existence. Like you said, he deserves a future. He didn't have one. So she took his picture and posted it, and that became, I won't give it away, but that became important. And the truth is always important. To see the truth and to be confronted with it is uncomfortable. But if you like to consider yourself an educated person, a fair-minded person, a person in favor of human rights, then you can't look away from things that make you uncomfortable, even if it doesn't align with your set beliefs. Yeah, believe me, I wish I could give up the pro-life movement and just, start a hobby. But while there's this much injustice out there, I don't feel comfortable resting while there are babies suffering. And women, because many women regret abortion and suffer trauma for decades after. I've seen it.
Yeah,
self-inflicted drug abuse, self-inflicted multiple abortions. I knew a woman who had 12. She hated herself, and she wasn't even 30 yet. Well, we helped her have a child, and she was just so blessed with that child, so grateful. And we helped her into rehab, and we helped her into GED, and we helped her find a faith background, regain her faith community. and housing and helped with her relationships. Everything that was broken can be repaired. If you are suffering, you've had an abortion, you regret it, there are projects like Rachel's Vineyard, where you can find online, where you can find hope and healing, and you can find a way back from feeling that somehow you're unworthy of being happy because you felt like abortion was your only choice. There's always a way back. And I don't want to condemn anyone who's had an abortion. I have not been in that circumstance, but I can imagine the desperation that a lot of women feel is sort of assumed that they'll go for an abortion. And we were talking before we got on about coerced, women that feel coerced about abortion. Because it's available, it is assumed that a woman will just go and have the procedure like it's nothing. And it's not their bodies that they're people that are pushing her into it. It's her body. And it's her emotions, and it's her future that she has to deal with. It's a lot harder than they think. But oftentimes women are threatened with being thrown out of the house, with beatings, with losing a relationship, even losing their other children. There's all kinds of coercion that goes on, and it's really a shame because it's not just a woman freely making a choice, as the abortion industry wants you to believe.
Yeah. Yep. If people are truly pro-choice, then they would support the efforts of pregnancy centers and sidewalk councils and anyone trying to intercept on behalf of those being coerced.
That's right. And if a woman is convinced to go have an abortion, we have counselors outside one of our pregnancy centers. No one forces her. And if she comes out later and wants to cry in our office and say, I hate what I did, she comes and she cries with us. Even if she's not sorry, if she wants to come talk to us, that's fine too. Because we find that I believe it's 40% of women have return abortions. So this may not be her first time, may not be her last time, like that young woman I told you with 12 abortions. They laughed at her in the clinic. They called her a frequent flyer. I don't think that's very funny. The first time she made a turn into our pregnancy center instead of the abortion clinic across the sidewalk, they were shocked. There was one of the staff members standing outside and her jaw dropped, and she put her life back together. And she doesn't hate herself anymore. She doesn't do self-destructive things. So it's wonderful to see what the right support can do. And we hope that Americans are educated about what abortion truly is before it's too late, before someone has a life-altering experience, and before babies' lives are ended, frankly, in such a horrific way. Women deserve better. I love that Feminists for Life saying women deserve better than abortion, because they do. This is the richest country on earth. Certainly something can be done that doesn't involve destroying life, destroying the mother's life, destroying the baby's life, and certainly not in conditions like Gosnell. And one of the most important points is that he's not alone. There were reports made by David DeLay and the reports made by Lila Rose about similar conditions in other late-term abortion clinics, including in Wichita under George Tiller and Leroy Carhart in Maryland, that babies were born into toilets and drowned. That's horrific. Filthy conditions, and women being treated like cattle. And that doesn't have to exist in this country. It never should. It never should exist anywhere. But we need to help. We need to help women that feel like they have no other choice, and we need to help those that are possibly pushing them into it to understand what they're doing. I mean, we believe in informed consent in medicine, yet Connecticut does not have a parental notification law. It's one of 11 states in the country. Rhode Island has it. Massachusetts have it. That's why underage young women during school hours will have a teacher drive them into Connecticut. They have a medical procedure without their parents' knowledge. These are the same parents that have to sign for an aspirin or ear piercing. But this girl could come home hemorrhaging with no doctor follow-up, and the parents have no idea what's going on. Or she could have her fertility altered for the rest of her life. And the parents have no idea what's going on. And it's just how extreme abortion can be, the abortion industry. That they don't even want a young girl to have her own parents' insight. Now, granted, there are some parents that are violent. In those cases, they can be gotten around by a judge. But honestly, we had a case where a girl was abducted, brought into an abortion clinic, underage girl with an overage man. Her child was aborted, and she went back into the hands of her captor because Planned Parenthood, against the law, refused to reveal that this was an illegal that this was a situation of child endangerment, child rape, actually, by the law, statutory rape. And if they had reported that young woman could have been brought out of captivity much sooner. So thank you so much, Terrisa, for coming on today. Give your information one more time so people can write it down.
Sure. You can follow me at Pro-Life San Francisco. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can visit our website at prolifesf.com. And then I'm also with Secular Pro-Life, so I definitely recommend following them. And another organization I'm on the board for is Rehumanize International. So if you're feeling like you want to follow a bunch of pro-life feminist organizations,
really quick, what's Rehumanize International? I meant to ask you about that. I got a couple of minutes here.
Oh. Yeah, Rehumanize International is a nonpartisan, non-sectarian human rights organization dedicated to ending violence against all human beings. Mm-hmm. It is a consistent life ethic organization based in Pittsburgh. So we champion issues from abortion to war to the prison industrial complex and any human rights issue of our time.
Wonderful. Yes, it's because those who perpetrate violence always dehumanize their victims, from the Nazis, to the slave owners, to anybody who's racist, anybody who's a sexist, anybody who wants to give excuse for hurting somebody else, and including the unborn child. They try and say they're glabellocells, they're human vermin, they're life unworthy of life, is what the Nazis said. And it's definitely a pro-life effort to preserve all human life from the unborn to the grave. And I certainly have participated in hearings in Connecticut against physician-assisted suicide. I have a daughter with Down syndrome, and sometimes the handicapped disabled are targeted more than others, again, because some people have determined that their lives are less worthy of living than others. And I want to tell you that this little girl, she's 16, is full of life and enjoys life to the fullest. It may be different, her means of enjoying it, but I think dancing and music and general merriment and general giving her sisters a hard time, including her mother and dad, are pretty universal. But she is full of life and love, and to think that there's a 67% rate of abortion because of Down syndrome is very disturbing. This is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and I always like to bring that up, that life with Down syndrome is different, but it's definitely beautiful, like all our lives. Life in San Francisco is different than Connecticut, but both of them are worth embracing and worth living to the full. So thank you so much, Terrisa Bukovinac, for coming and joining us, and good luck with informing the people of San Francisco. I'll work on the East Coast, and you work on the West Coast. We'll meet you in the middle.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care now. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.